This is the Resilient Advisor Show. My name is Jay Coulter. Today we're talking about webinars and their effectiveness for financial advisors with Samantha Russell from 20 over 10. Samantha, thanks so much for coming back on the show. I believe this is your third time on the Resilient Advisor.
Yes, I'm so happy to be back. And you have changed that intro since the last time I was here. That's really nifty. I love it.
So Samantha, I think you've evolved with the show because at first it was just a podcast. And then we had, a live stream without all these fancy graphics. In fact, I think it might have even been just a simple Zoom. And now we have this whole digital studio and graphics coming in and videos. It's evolved, but I got to tell you, here on the front end, most of my digital marketing evolution has been a result of following you and the guidance that you give financial advisors. I just copy it and use it for
You are so kind. That is so sweet. Well, I think the most important thing you just said there, though, was it evolved. And where you started is not where you are today. People see other people podcasting or creating video and they think, well, if I get started, it has to look like that. And that is not the case. Start where you're at. Don't let perfect or trying to emulate what someone else is doing be the enemy of done.
Yeah. Very, very well said. So today we're going to talk about webinars and their effectiveness. Before we get started, we're recording this in December of 2020. There's been some big news out of your firm, 20 over 10 and Lead Pilot. Please tell viewers and listeners what's happened.
Yes. So just 2 days ago, we announced that 20 over 10 has been acquired by FMG Suite. So up until really Tuesday, we were seen obviously as competitors in the space. And now we're going from competitors to teammates. And so it was shocking news, I think, for a lot of people. But the more people digest it, the more they think about it. I've heard from so many people who initially would just send me a message like, oh my gosh. And then they, 12 hours later were like, this is so smart. So I think, the initial shock wears off and you think about what the future might hold, what the next decade is going to look like. And we are so excited to partner with FMG Suite and create an amazing future helping advisors market their practices.
So I don't think I've ever told you this story, but half a decade ago when I left asset management and started consulting, primarily my focus is on the investment portfolio side, but I also try to build websites and do social media. So I thought, hey, I'm going to do this as part of my value proposition.
Oh, build websites for other people. Okay.
Yes. Yep. For other financial advisors and RIAs. And it's not in my core skill set. And then I finally got to the point where I just said, when people would ask, go to 20 over 10. Because it's a turnkey solution for advisors. They get results. And then I was able to point them to all my clients that had 20 over 10 sites. So through that lens, Samantha, how's that going to change when people are referring folks, advisors are going to 20 over 10 in light of this acquisition?
Yes, it's a great question. And my inbox is filled with that question. So the short answer is it's not. You can still send them our way and they'll still work with our same team of designers and developers. And, there's still the FMG platform right now and the 20 over 10 platform. Of course, as we think about the future and what we want to build, we have so many ideas and scenarios. We are still very much in the discovery phase of what that will look like. But the idea is to take the strengths of both of our platforms and things that people like about them and create something new that could be another option for the future. So, it's hard. People always want to know, well, what comes next? And you don't want to spend too much time speculating. And then people go back and say, well, you said this. So we don't know. It's still very much exploratory. But as of today, keep sending them our way. We'd love to work with them.
Yeah. So referring them to you is going to be a no-brainer. Sounds like the experience will not change at all, at least at this stage. One tool that you guys rolled out, was it 3, 4, 5 months ago, Lead Pilot?
Yes.
I found advisors having a lot of success with it. In full disclosure, I do have an affiliate relationship with Lead Pilot. I've done an awful job marketing it. The reason I set it up is I had clients that were onboarding the Lead Pilot system. I kind of helped them go through the process, and man, they got results from the beginning. So I'm going to share the screen on what the Lead Pilot system kind of looks like. If you would like to get a 10% discount on Lead Pilot, visit resilientadvisor.com/Lead Pilot. But walk listeners and viewers through what the Lead Pilot system delivers, and then we'll go dive into webinars and figure out how to fill this thing up for them.
Yeah. So if you're interested, obviously check it out. And that's a great discount to be able to get. So you can see there that little journey that's on the screen. And really what we're talking about is we have entered what we call, what I've coined the digital referral shift. So we went from a model where most advisors got their new business from a referral first mechanism to now a digital marketing first mechanism is where we are headed and where some of the most successful advisors already are at. And so what Lead Pilot allows you to do is to utilize inbound marketing, even if you're only a firm of one person. So we provide original ghostwritten content that you can completely customize for your audience and personalize. You can also upload your own content. It is got a social media scheduling tool, an email marketing tool, drip campaigns, branded landing pages. So every single member of your team can have custom messaging. It has infographics, videos. You can use all the content in there that we create. You can use all your own content. You can collaborate with your team. Then with every lead that comes in or prospect, you also get intel on them. So where do they live? How old are they? We scrape the internet for publicly available information to arm you with a lot more information about that person. You also see what they're reading, what they're interested in. It integrates with tools you're already using like Riskalyze and Wealthbox and Redtail. So it really is a amazing lead generation and communications platform for advisors.
Yeah, and I do a lot of work with Wealthbox. The integration there is great, and it really creates a seamless experience for the advisor, even if you are not tech savvy.
Well said.
So, Samantha, we're going to talk webinars. I've never done a webinar. About a month ago, I had a client ask me to come and present on a webinar to his client base. So he's a financial advisor. He works with small business owners, and he wanted me to present my leadership system. And I said, sure. And then he assumed that I had a platform and a way to do it. And I've never done a webinar. I've never seen the value in a webinar for me as a consultant to financial advisors. And I think I'm wrong about that. And so what I found is I didn't have the tools and resources. It seemed a little overwhelming at first. And so as we go through this process, I'm going to be learning like I always do in our interviews. But my takeaway when I started digging under the surface, advisors are getting results with webinars. So let's set the table here. Why do advisors need to do webinars?
So it's sort of like asking, especially now in our post-COVID world, why would you do events? 5 or 10 years ago, if people would say you should do events and you'd say, why? It's the same mindset. It's a very low-hanging fruit way to get people exposed to you, to the value proposition you can offer, to your expertise. They don't feel like it's going to be a sales pitch. They don't have to sit across from you at a table and feel put on the spot about, do you want to work with me? Do you want to sign these papers right now? It's a way for them to come and to learn and to not feel like they have to make a decision. They're not going to be put on the spot. So we like that as human beings. We don't want to have to deal with another sales pitch, right? So the great thing about webinars, though, versus live events is that there's so many aspects that make them more useful of your time because you can repurpose them in so many different ways. So what I mean by that is you can record a webinar once, then take that video recording, put it on a website, a blog, gate it. So what I mean by gated is only if you give your email can you watch it. So you can collect further leads in the future. You can also take the entire transcript and transcribe it on your page. So from an SEO perspective, if your webinar is all about capital gains taxes and you are talking all about that, now that's becoming great content from an SEO perspective that's on your website. You can also have guests. So, when you talk about centers of influence, it's a lot easier to, make a connection and cross promote things when you can say, hey, come join me on this webinar. You can promote it to your audience. I'll promote it to my audience and we can each share our expertise. And then finally, it's really easy to see who the most engaged prospects are. You can see who asked the most question, how much time did they spend in the webinar, how attentive were they? And you can determine who your warmest leads are. So for all of these reasons, I am really bullish on webinars.
Yeah, and your business started leveraging webinars in the early days and you found a lot of success. Didn't you? Could you speak to that?
Yeah. We actually, it's funny, the 20 over 10 was definitely a startup, a small startup, and we did not have a big marketing budget. So much of what I have utilized as a marketing strategy was just being scrappy, making do with what we had. And so webinars were a really cost-effective way to do that. I knew I had expertise that I could share about how our firm could help. So I thought, let's put it out there. Let's share this knowledge with people. And we'll, at the end, tell them if you want to learn more about how we can help you with our tools, stay on for 5 minutes and we'll share that information. And people loved it. And when we first started doing it, we would get maybe 30 or 40 people to join. And we were so excited. Those are 30 or 40 highly engaged prospects. Now we get about 800 people that come to those events. And it's really a mixed bag. We still get lots of our current clients who come every single month, as well as people who may never want to work with us for various reasons. Maybe they can't because their broker dealer, requires them to use a different tool, or for whatever reason, maybe they're not the decision maker at their firm, but they're still learning. And we've built such an amazing community. And that's the other thing about webinars. When you get a group of people together over and over again, it starts to be like this family, and you build these mega supporters. And we have built mega supporters who love 20 over 10 and Lead Pilot and our brand because of the engagement we provide through those webinars.
Wow, you sold me. All right, so the best part about all the work that you put out is you make it simple enough that you can execute on. And whether it's something a video you're producing that you have on social media, your webinars, or your blog post, they're very easy to understand and then execute. So I'm sharing a screenshot of a blog post right now that lays out your simple 4-step process to executing on successful webinars. If you're watching this live right now on social, I'm actually going to post this on all of the sites, and it will be in the show notes. Samantha, walk us through this 4-step process for successful webinars.
Well, thank you for pulling this up, because I had it pulled up on another screen, so now I don't have to do that. So the 4 Ps, we try to come up with acronyms or, different ways to help us remember things, and hopefully it's useful for you all as well. So the first P is prep. So this is very simple things like choose a time when your audience is most likely to show up. For us, working with financial advisors, we find Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern is a golden time, and we catch a lot of people at that time live.
Samantha, I'm curious, why do you think it's Thursday at 3 p.m.?
So there's been a lot of studies that show Wednesdays and Thursdays are best because Fridays, a lot of people have checked out. Early in the week, people are accomplishing their biggest to-dos. So Wednesdays and Thursdays tend to be best in general. I think for a lot of advisors, oftentimes you're the queen or king of your own domain where you set your own schedule. So by the end of nearing the end of the day, you have a little bit more downtime. And so you're, you preload your meetings earlier in the day and so later in the day. And that's just what we have found. But for, those listening, if you're working with a lot of pre-retirees, it might be a very different time. It might be early in the morning or over lunch. If you're working with entrepreneurs or business owners that are crazy busy, it might be 7 p.m., in the evening, that's best. So you're going to have to play around and see what time works best for you. But choosing a great time is an important point. The other thing I highly suggest is in all of your communication, you want to put a little asterisk that says, even if you can't join us live, make sure you sign up and we'll send you the recording and all of the resources just by signing up. So that way you're going to get a much bigger registrant list than somebody who just says, oh, I can't make it that time. So then they don't register.
Yeah, no, I probably have watched 80% of the webinars that I've watched recorded after the fact as opposed to live. And what's interesting, just as an aside for listeners who are generally financial advisors, I find organizations like the CMT Association do them at 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. And then there's a group out there, Michael Guyad, who's been a guest on the show. He has something called the ETF Think Tank, and they do it at 5 o'clock. But they're servicing financial advisors, and it's the thought there, Samantha, that's a more optimal time for them. But for the advisors that want to go serve the retail clients, 3 o'clock, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, again, you got to know your audience. The other thing is we've really started to build a much bigger audience of not always just the advisors themselves, but an admin or somebody who's tasked with running marketing at the firm. And so it is their job. And so they can block up their calendar and show up because they know they're going to get valuable information that's going to help them do their job better. And so they can make time for it. So again, it's really about knowing your audience and playing around with when you think you can catch them.
Makes perfect sense.
So that's like the first part is prep, choose the date, choose the time. Make sure also that you have the right tools. We use Zoom. We keep it really easy. And something that some people don't realize. So let's say you have the 500 account Zoom webinar plan. So that means once you hit 500 people in the webinar, anybody else will be locked out. That doesn't mean that once you hit 500 registrants, you can't sign anyone else up. So we actually just have the 500 person plan. And we'll usually sign up 800 people per webinar, but usually only about half will actually show up for any webinar you give. So, we have 400 to 500 show up, nobody's going to get locked out. So you don't necessarily need the plan level for the number of registrants. You need it for about half that because 50 to 60 people will show up live. 60% of people will show up live.
Okay, so 50 to 60% show up live. Having people blocked out, I think, would be a good problem to have. I think most advisors would be okay with that.
Maybe, although you will get some. One time when the pandemic first started and Zoom was experiencing just such a surge of new activity, there was some mix up and our account, for whatever reason, locked people out at 100 people and people were not happy with that. So I would suggest not having that happen if you can. And yeah, make sure you have a big enough account.
Let's go on to the next P, promotion.
Yes. So what I find with any kind of content is that people spend, 80% of the time creating the content and only maybe 20%, and that's probably being generous, promoting it. And really, you're doing such a disservice because somebody seeing your email once or your tweet once is not enough to get a high amount of registrants. So when it comes to promotion, there's a couple things I want you to do. Number one, go to Canva, Canva, and create a really beautiful graphic. They have 1 million templates you can choose from, and it's free to promote your event. So put the faces of the speakers that are going to be there, especially if they're well-known or a great center of influence. You could put your logo, have the title, maybe a checklist of what people will learn. Create a great graphic. That's a really big key to promoting it, especially on social media. You can also create a quick video, like a 1-minute video explaining what somebody will learn and why they should make time to plan to join you. But then the best tip I can give is to make sure you email people at least 3 times. So that is the sweet spot when it comes to the number of emails that you want to send to get the highest number of registrants possible. We typically like to email people out anywhere from a week and a half to 2 weeks before initially, and then a couple days before, and then the day of. And we find that we will get the highest number of registrants that way.
So a digital promo card, a video talking about the benefits of attending the webinar, and then 3 emails.
Yep. And if you have a center of influence or a partner joining you, you're going to get double the bang for your buck because then their audience and your audience are both going to be exposed, and you can tap some of their audience and they can tap some of yours. So the more you can team up with others, the better.
Excellent. So while you were talking, Josh Taffer from Mississippi chimed in about your 500 attendees. And boy, I agree with him. 500 seems crazy. Have you seen retail financial advisors have 500 attendees on a webinar?
No, I have not. Not personally. That is obviously with, our 20 over 10 brand, we're serving advisors all across the country, and we have honed in on a very specific niche. So those are, 2 things that I think you need to keep in mind. How big of an audience can you realistically serve? Mm-hmm. And have you honed in on a more defined enough niche that people are all going to tell their buddies and friends who would be a good candidate to come? So we have so many people that join because someone else told them, they told another advisor, hey, we always go to these webinars that Samantha and the 20 over 10 team puts on, you should join. And they know they're specifically for financial advisors, all the examples we're going to use, all the tech we're going to talk about, compliance, it's all there. So if you specifically work with, not just doctors, physicians, and medical professionals, but doctors in the greater Philadelphia area. And you can use examples of hospitals they work at or residency programs. You're going to get more people telling their friends, but your footprint of who you can invite is going to be more limited because of the geographic area. So worry less about the total number of people and more about, is it niched down enough that everybody on is going to feel like you have so much pertinent information to share with just them and it's not too general or broad.
So then what would be a good baseline number? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here to set expectations that an advisor, if they execute on this and they have a developed market, and I know it's different for every advisor in the brand that they've already started, but is a 10-person webinar worth their time?
Absolutely. Imagine if I said, can I get you 10 meetings with prospects? Is that worth your time? That's basically what it is. I mean, they're in the room with you, listening to you talk and can ask you questions. I don't know who would pass up the opportunity to talk to 10 people. And even though we still have lots of webinars, where we have hundreds of people, I'm often asked by smaller up and coming groups, women in insurance. I can't think of the exact name, but different groups where sometimes they might say, hey, we're new to this. Our organization isn't used to webinars in the format. So we might only be able to get 20 people to come. I will still do it. Absolutely. Because that's 20 people that have never heard of us before that are now sitting there and listening. So no audience of interested prospects is too small, in my opinion.
Excellent. Just like in the pre-COVID world, if you had an opportunity to present somewhere to 5, 10, 15 people, you'd want to take advantage of it.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, all right. The fourth P, presentation. What are your tips for advisors executing?
Okay. So once you've got your, topic laid out, one of the things that I see people doing over and over again is they just take words and they put them up on the screen. Well, that's a terrible approach. What you want to do is use as many examples or graphics as you can to illustrate your point. So share stories, share examples, the more, the better. And if you're just talking about something and you're like, I don't really have a great visual, then get rid of the slides and just talk. So you can certainly put up some key stats or numbers, or maybe if there's like, you must do this by this date in order to qualify for X, like have those key dates up there. But you want your presentation to be engaging, not distracting. And when you're just, what I see a lot of people doing for all intents and purposes is having bullet points that are just their talking points of what they're going to talk about. And that's what we want to stay away from. So again, talking about Canva, they have great presentations you can use, but think about ways that you can make it look great on the screen, including examples as much as you can, or even just like stock photo images with text to the left of it, just to give the eye something to make it more compelling. And I suggest keeping the presentation between 20 and 30 minutes in terms of length. So that gives people ample time to ask questions. And also that's about how much time typically we can handle digesting new information before it starts to just be overload.
So have you seen a tool called Prezi? Przie.
Yes.
Would that be a good tool to use in a webinar format?
To be completely candid, I've never used it before myself, but I know people using so many different, that is an option. I know people love Keynote, which is another presentation. I mean, whatever you want to use that you're comfortable with, that's fine. You can just do a Google search like best presentation slide deck maker. And there's so many free options. Just make it look good. And again, that's going to be a moving target. Your first one's never going to look as good as your 40th one. But you want to start off with that being an important point from the get-go.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on the actual presentation itself?
The only other thing I would say is don't make it a sales pitch, right? You want to get people to stick around as long as possible. You want to give away your best information that you can pretty much for free. So the idea being that even if you give away 99% of what you know for free, probably only about 1% of people would ever go implement it on their own without your help. So don't be afraid that you're giving away all this gold information. Don't make it a sales pitch. Really keep it educational. And then people will tell their friends and their colleagues and their loved ones about how great you are. And you'll get more people coming back the next time.
Yeah, that's gold. And that's the whole aspect, even on social media, of giving and giving and giving. It's amazing. I give away my whole program. You just have to go execute it yourself and pay me for the actual execution part of it, for the most part. So great advice. Let's move on to the fourth P, which is post.
So post webinar, this is the part where I think a lot of people fall off, and that, just because somebody came and attended a session you did once doesn't mean they're ready that day to work with you. But a lot of people feel like it's all or nothing. Either they're going to sign the papers and become a client today, or they're lost forever and I lost the opportunity. And really what we want to do is create a mechanism to drip on them over time. So think of like a faucet. You don't want it to be on full blast where it's just a stream of water. You want to be dripping on them very, very calmly over time so that you stay top of mind. So that's where a tool like Lead Pilot is so great, right? Because what you can do is you can create, November 30th webinar on this topic and put all of the people that attended into a segment in the software. And then you can just say, okay, over the next 7 weeks, these folks are going to get one email every 10 days about a pertinent topic related to what we talked about. And the call to action at the bottom of each email will be, if you have questions about this strategy, feel free to book a time on my calendar. So it's not being pushy. It's not, trying to, again, to have a sales pitch as much as continue to provide helpful information after the webinar is over and drip on them so that you stay top of mind. And one other thing you can do, again, is go back and look. Like Zoom will allow you to look at everybody who signed up, who attended versus who didn't attend. And I suggest sending everybody, whether they attended or not, the recording of your webinar. I also suggest taking that recording, putting it on YouTube, and you're going to get even more exposure there, especially if you put in the keywords in a great SEO friendly way. People can land and stumble on your webinar and watch it on YouTube. So you're going to get more bang for your buck that you now have it on YouTube as well, where people can find you. And then the very last thing is create a quick little clip. So you can edit out a clip from the webinar. We usually do like a 1.5 minute takeaway, and you can post it on social media to show one of the great lessons that you shared and say, hey, if you missed it, here's where you can go to get the recording, and then send them back to either your YouTube channel or your blog where you have posted the full replay.
All right, so we've got a question from a LinkedIn viewer. Before I get to that, I want to touch on what you just said, because I saw you talk about that on, it was either an interview or you had posted something on social media. And I started doing that, maybe about a month and a half ago, 2 months. Record an interview, pull out little bitty clips, repurpose them of some of the high level content that's actionable with backlinks to the full interview or whatever resource my guest was talking about. Those get more views and traction than the actual interview itself. And I have you to thank for that. It's an absolutely fantastic tool.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. That's awesome.
All right. So Dave Jaslowski from Sound Financial has a question. Could you please expand on the promotional aspect of it, and particularly as it relates to Facebook ads?
Yes. So to be perfectly candid, I have not had any experience either myself or with our clients seeing a huge uptick in registrants from Facebook ads. And that may be because the clients we were working with didn't have a targeted enough list of actual prospects. That would be, because again, you want to be as granular as you can on a topic. What I find works best for getting the most registrants possible is picking a great partner who's going to have an audience that is not yet exposed to you, and to have them help you cross promote it to their audience. So let me just give you a quick story. So there's an advisor that we work with in Pittsburgh, and his audience is medical professionals, but he can work with anybody in the country. And he had put together this great 30-minute presentation, a beautiful slide deck about a particular financial planning topic for physicians. He then messaged the director of these residency programs. So they have new residents coming in who have a lot of questions. They're going from all this medical school debt to becoming a doctor with a high income. And they're, what do I pay down in the debt? What are the tax strategies? All these questions. And he messaged the residents with the full slide deck. And he said, here's the presentation. This is the day and time I'm giving it. It's not a sales pitch. Here's my website, I'm a fiduciary, all of that stuff. If you have any questions, let me know. But if you wanted to share it with your residents, it's a free program. He's a CFP. So he had like 3 different hospitals who ended up sharing it with some folks, and he ended up getting 300 registrants because people were like, okay, yeah, this is great. This is great free information that I can get. The hospital, I think, had a disclaimer like, we don't sponsor this, anything like that. But get creative with who will your information benefit, and how can they help you cross promote it? That's really what you want to be thinking about. Ads, yes, they can work, but I don't think they get nearly the impact, especially for solo firms that don't have the budget to be spending that much on the ads in the first place, as the organic strategies will.
Your answer surprises me. I thought that Facebook ads were an effective way, just from what I've read, were an effective way to get people into your funnel and into your webinar. And what you're saying is that that's not really the case.
I'm not saying that there's not an effective way to get them in your funnel, but to get them to attend a live event is the difference. So again, and I'm sure there's going to be people who are going to be way more versed, like Facebook ad specialists, who will message us and say she's wrong and here's why. And maybe they can share their strategies. I'm just saying from my own personal experience, I have not found the ads to be as effective as the organic strategies, especially because a lot of the firms we work with are 1 to 5 person shops where the amount they can put towards the ads is not that much of a budget. So, they're not going to see the same kinds of results.
Another question from Josh Taffer on Twitter. His question is around getting prospect emails and how you can acquire them. And I think the spirit of his question is, are you just sending this out to everybody you know, or do they need to register for it? What are best practices in the process?
Yeah. So again, when you're first starting, we talked about what's a good number. And I don't know if I ever even answered that question, but I think, getting 10, 15, 30 people to sign up is great. And the more you do them, the more you build up your credibility, the more people you'll get. In the beginning, a great strategy would be to ask some of your clients, say, hey, I'm going to do this event. Let's say there was something about the Secure Act where it would benefit everybody that's already a client of yours. You could invite them, but also say, this is free and open to the public. So if you have any friends or family members that would benefit from this, have them join. And here's where they can sign up. And now you're going to collect all of those email addresses as well. So making it something that would be beneficial to your current clients as well. Again, it's not a sales pitch. So if you keeping in the mindset of you're not trying to sell anyone anything, it really expands who you can ask. Every single webinar we give, we have tons of our current clients that are there because it's so packed with valuable information that they can use. And then they end up pulling in friends that don't already work with us. So the more you just think about what can I share that's going to be helpful, the more people you'll have sign up. So I would say start with something where you can invite your current clients, tell them it's free and open to the public, and have them invite people. And then you'll start to build up more people. I don't want anybody to think I'm telling them not to do Facebook ads. If you want to try that, that's certainly fine. But I always suggest sort of starting with the organic options first. A lot of people want a diet, they want a quick pill that's going to make it happen overnight, that they can sort of buy their way to success. And it just tends to not work as well.
So as we went through that last segment there and getting people to webinars and some of the challenges with it, it took me back to when I started my career. So I'm a Gen Xer. I started out in a Dean Witter bullpen in the mid-90s, and I would spend a month making 500 cold calls a day to try and get people to come to one of 2 seminars. And Samantha, if 10 people showed up to each seminar, that was a huge win. And this actually is no different. You scrape and you claw to get people there, to build your brand, to start getting folks interested in hearing how you can add value, get them into your orbit, add value, and then maybe they become clients. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. I try to explain to people that we are no longer in the age of really selling anybody anything. Honestly, with the internet at our fingertips, we can find any information that we want about anything. So instead, what you want to do is you want to be the person giving the great information. And then that's going to make somebody want to work with you. So stop thinking of it as, I got to make my sales pitch so great, and think of it as, I have to be the one that shows up when someone types a question into Google or they're on social media and they're thinking about that question, and my content shows up, so that they will read my article, see that I can provide value, and then want to work with me. We don't answer cold calls anymore. We don't read cold emails anymore in the way that we used to. We've been so bombarded that we've just trained our brains to tune it out. So instead, just keep giving away valuable information, and the right people will find you.
Awesome. Samantha, we are way over time. As always, you've added a tremendous amount of value. For podcast listeners, follow Samantha on Twitter at Samantha20. That's at Samantha20. And to find out more information about 20 over 10 and Lead Pilot, visit 20over10.com. That's 20over10.com. Samantha, thank you so much.
Thank you.